but it's also a guard retention movement if you want to just kind of use it that way, in particular against the knee cut. So when we go into the material here, we're going to have a drill on how you go from De La Riva to reverse De La Riva, but because we have some specific knee cut defense from the De La Riva guard that doesn't involve the reverse De La Riva, it's important to note that there's some people who are just going to drive into a knee cut pass on you, and you're going to utilize the reverse De La Riva that way. I also think that the reverse De La Riva is probably like the preeminent modern no-gi guard, right? Like as far as you know, the more old school butterfly, closed guard, half guard type stuff, you see that a lot in no-gi. If you're going to see anything other than that, you're typically going to see the reverse De La Riva. So in this series, we're trying to give you more options from the Mantis, from the DMX, from the regular no-gi De La Riva guard, which can round out your arsenal. But we definitely want to, you know, concede the point that this is the guard that people are going to use a lot. It's not a huge part of our system. There's some material that you can, you know, seek out that really gets into detail on the reverse De La Riva guard. We use it a little bit differently. We use some different attacks, although we will still include, like later on when we do attacks and some of that, the Kiss of the Dragon and all that kind of thing.
Prototypical attack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so let's start to go over our first like basic kind of maintenance for the reverse De La Riva, which is just switching from the De La Riva to the reverse De La Riva. As we've kind of mentioned in the intro, this isn't our primary guard in this system. Our primary guard is the no-gi De La Riva DMX hybrid and the Mantis guard. Those are the two that we're really trying to focus on. However, any kind of no-gi De La Riva system would be incomplete without some reverse De La Riva material. We're not trying to be exhaustive with this. We're trying to give you some basic movements and some basic attacks. So this will be the shortest part of this system. But the first thing is just going to be, of my own volition, I'm switching from De La Riva to reverse De La Riva. I'm going to do that by posting my foot on my partner's hip, lifting and switching sides, and inserting the De La Riva hook. I can keep this foot in here. We'll kind of talk about this on a few occasions about like preventing the Estima lock. So like, now's not the time. We'll get into more detail on that. So I've got myself into the reverse De La Riva guard. I'm going to use this foot to step, lift. I can check this hip as I go, switch my butt to the other side. You'll notice that I shifted my hands and then I let go. I don't want to release because now he's gone. I'm not controlling the lever to his hip. So if I started in De La Riva, I can go post, lift, switch, switch, or I can just go post, like start with the shape that you're going to be making in reverse De La Riva, lift, switch your butt, switch your hands. When I switch my hands, I'm temporarily gripping with both. My butt drops to the other side. I embrace with the hook, pulling my knee in, and I've got my reverse De La Riva. I don't play this very much. I mostly play this and this. We'll get to that in a minute. But for the drill, we can keep our foot here. Now again, we're going to switch backwards. So I'm holding here. Usually I'll be holding a little bit higher up, but for the drill, I'll hold at the ankle. I'll lift my hip. Again, I can temporarily block, or I can just make the switch while maintaining the inside hook. I switch my hands, I drop my butt, I move back to the De La Riva on this side. Again, I can put my foot here, lift, switch, switch. I can start with the hook here, put my foot on the ground, lift, switch, and put my foot back on the ground, lift, switch. As long as there's something always interfering with my partner's ability to move forward into a knee cut pass. So for instance, if I were to go from here and just go like this and try to switch, that wouldn't be a great idea. I want to make sure that I'm blocking my partner's knee from traveling across this line. So let's say I'm here, I go 1, 2. You can't immediately knee cut. That's how you know you're doing your switch correctly. If at some point I just kind of go like that and he can move into his knee cut, I've screwed up. Right? So that's the basic drill. You can do it on both sides. The other way, and the way, quite frankly, that you're likely to end up in the De La Riva guard, at least if you're playing our system, is if somebody sheds this hook and starts to move into the knee cut, and we block them and meet them with our reverse De La Riva guard. So let's just turn a little bit here. So Matt shed this hook, and as soon as I recognize, okay, knee cut is coming, my shin here is going to meet his knee. So as he goes across, my shin is meeting his knee. I'm creating a fairly strong frame. Now I shift my butt to the other side, and I'm immediately extending him. We're going to talk a little bit about Kazushi in future videos, but I don't want to stay down here where my foot is not connected. I want to attach my thigh to my partner's shin, and I want to wrap my leg almost like a vine around my partner's hip. This allows, if he drives in, my thigh is protecting me. My leg and my biceps roughly are connected, so like good knee-elbow connection when we talk about when we're defending our guard, we don't want this space to be open. So I'm crunching in. This foot is going to the ground for the kuzushi, which again we'll go over in the next video, but we can also place our foot here as long as we never place our foot too deep. This is where we end up with the estima lock. If just my toes are in here, I'm not going to get estima locked. It's too strong a frame. Here, it's becoming a lever, and I'm in deep trouble. So as long as you're just really wary of the hip line, and you just kind of put your big toe on the crease of the hip, you're going to be fine. As soon as this happens, and my partner's stomach covers the edge of my foot, then I'm in deep, deep shit. So just be aware of that. Again, I don't play this as much. I play this and this a lot more, just because I don't want to have to worry about the estima lock. Right? I'm an old man. I don't have like meow feet. I can't really eat foot locks, so I'm pretty careful about this. But if you're going to be here, this is where you want to be. So again, De La Riva guard. He starts to move across. I meet him, and then I switch. I'm also framing across the shoulder. We've talked about this in previous videos. Don't make this shape. We've got a friend, Philippe Matos, who will break your damn wrist in a hurry and give you a nice smile afterwards because he's a friendly guy. But make sure you're keeping the edge of your hand here while you're initiating your kuzushi, resetting, and if you're playing with our system, I would recommend that you just move yourself back into the De La Riva or the Mantis and work from there. But if you do develop an affinity for the reverse De La Riva, there's certainly some good attacks from there, and we'll get to that in the next section, but the subsequent videos are going to follow the pattern of like basic kuzushi and retention. All right, we've already kind of covered how you're going to meet your partner's attempt to go from the De La Riva guard into a knee cut with a switch to the reverse De La Riva. We just wanted to quickly cover the idea of just using the reverse De La Riva guard versus a knee cut passer that didn't originate with a De La Riva situation. So if I'm playing a recumbent guard and my partner is just like here and he's starting to move in, just immediately meeting the shoulder, which is the leading edge, again, using my ulna, not making this wrist lock shape across the chest, using my ulna kind of against the collarbone shoulder area and making sure that there's no space. I'm also making sure that my bicep comes underneath my shin right off the bat before I worry about connecting to this. If I'm reaching here and I don't have a really good like knee elbow connection here, like this is the more important part. I don't want my partner to get into this space. Right? If his knee starts to, or his hip starts to occupy here, he's into his guard pass. So the first thing I'm really trying to do as somebody moves into a knee cut is bring my knee and my elbow together and then, or my knee and my biceps together, and then I can worry about connecting to their calf or their heel or whatever else I might be doing here, pummeling, doing whatever kind of stuff. So just try to make sure that you have that option. If, for instance, I'm playing a seated guard and Matt just pushes me onto my back, starts to knee cut, I'm immediately meeting him with my biceps, with my hand on his shoulder, with my biceps connected to my thigh, and then I can be framing, pummeling this foot in, or putting this foot on the ground and going to the kuzushi again, which we'll deal with in another video. But we just kind of wanted to mention that this doesn't have to be a switch from De La Riva to reverse De La Riva. Anytime somebody initiates a knee cut pass, you should be able to lock into the reverse De La Riva guard as a preventative measure and play from there. Okay, our basic kuzushi utilizing the reverse De La Riva guard is going to involve kind of a similar movement to what we do with the De La Riva. So with the De La Riva, we would be pressing our partner away and then pulling them in and loading them up. It's kind of the same thing with the reverse De La Riva. If my partner's driving in towards me, I use my foot on the mat and I extend my leg while making sure to keep my knee slightly turned in. If I rotate my leg out, he's going to be able to access the lever. So I'm kind of pressing him forward using, and we'll give you a different angle here, using kind of like, it's almost like I'm using my toes to push on the side of his hip while keeping my leg really laced around his. It's important that I use my foot in base for this. It's possible to do this kuzushi here as well, and certainly if you're like really looking for those Kiss of the Dragon style inversions, you can do that. But I would suggest that against a bigger, heavier opponent, it's really important because like Matt can't magically gain 50 pounds, but if I were to try to like kick him here, as opposed to putting my foot in strong base and really extending him forward, I think this is a more reliable attack, and it still creates the option of going to whatever kind of Kiss of the Dragon type stuff you want to attack. So that's the Kazushi that we're using when our partner obliges us with this kind of forward weight shift. However, if we're dealing with somebody who's being pretty conservative and hesitant, and they're hanging out here, this lift may not be as powerful. In that case, we're going to use a variant of what we did with the regular De La Riva. So with the regular De La Riva, we would use our thigh to push our partner back and then bring them back in to load them up. So with the reverse De La Riva, we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to drop our De La Riva hook, and we're going to use the inside of our thigh against the side of my partner, or like the front of my partner's shin and knee. I'm going to push him backwards. If he were to continue to stay going in that direction, we'll go over the tripod sweep in more detail in a later video, but I would simply block and reverse De La Riva tripod sweep him. He's probably going to know that. So when I start to push him backwards, he will push back in, and that sets him up for that first Kazushi that we utilize. So the interplay between those two, very much like the interplay between the regular Nogi De La Riva Kazushi going backward, forward, and the Mantis Guard backward and forward Kazushi, where we're threatening our partner with a shift backwards using a lever mechanic, and then as they respond to it, we draw them in, load them up, and unbalance them. You're using the reverse De La Riva the same way. Push them over, and then follow-up attacks will follow. As with the rest of the guards in our series, we've utilized the basic Kazushi to the tripod sweep, and the reverse De La Riva is no different. So the Kazushi we're talking about here, well, first off, I mean, I can also just kind of push someone back, and if they start stepping backwards to recover their base, I can attack them this way, but I can also use that same Kazushi that we've utilized in the past, which is this one, which again causes our partner's center of gravity to shift backwards just because of the lever control. So if you're using more of the classical foot on the hip, which I don't use as much, or you're using more foot and base here and undoing the hook, starting to tilt our partner backwards, we're going to hook with this foot. If the foot was already on the hip, it would just stay there. If it's not, as I hook, I simply press and bring my partner down. From here, the order of operations is to maintain control of the heel, making sure that I keep my forearm over top like this. And we've kind of talked about this in other material. If this gap exists and your foot can come free, I'm losing control of that lever, so I want to make sure that my forearm stays over top. And then this leg is going to swim inside right away. Because if I come up now, I'm coming up into the reverse De La Riva, and you might just do the same thing right back to me. So I just want to make sure, let's go through the sweep again from a slightly different angle here. So again, we've got either our push, again, with the ball of the foot, not keeping the edge of the foot in here. The Estima lock is a real threat under these circumstances, so I'm keeping just the ball of the foot. If I manage to push you back and you take a step, I hook and I just keep pushing, and now I immediately pummel my leg in. When I come up, again, my forearm should be over top here, I'm being a bit lazy. I pummel and I keep the tension here, pulling down on the foot and driving with my shin. So I actually want to try to come up and attempt to finish a pass. How likely that is to happen depends on the speed of my partner's reaction, but it's worth doing anyway, because forcing some kind of defense is better than forcing no defense and having your partner, leaving them to their own device. Yeah, setting his own stuff up, leave them to their own devices. So again, it's a basic reaction to somebody pushing backwards, and as we've talked about again ad nauseum kind of in the series, if I do use this Kazushi and you step backwards and you recognize the threat and you drive back in, then you're being loaded up, and all the other types of attacks that come from somebody driving forward or you being able to lift them, off balance them, tip them forward are going to come into play. So like with all the other attacks, don't insist on it. It's not like I'm trying to tripod sweep you. I'm probing with the tripod sweep. Tripod is our jab for all of our open guards against a standing opponent. That probing allows us to draw reaction, and then will allow us to set up everything else. But every once in a while, unlike in boxing, I'm going to knock you out with my jab. I am actually going to put you down, and I'm going to be able to complete the sweep. All right, so now we need to start addressing a couple of the common passes that you're going to face when you're playing reverse De La Riva. We call this a power slide. Matt's going to demonstrate. So he's going to be controlling the shin, shedding the hook, and just kind of sliding through. Exactly. Some potential finishes here also involve just like moving around the north-south. So as he power slides through and continues to control that ankle, yeah, that's a really strong way to finish. Because it's not super likely that someone's just going to let you into this space, but as they attempt to shell up, as long as you're maintaining control of this leg, they can move around to north-south or to like knee right. So I use this pass a lot myself. It's very effective, especially against guys who only play reverse de la Riva guard. Like I've had really good success with it. So my response to this is going to come from, first of all, as soon as he gets this grip, we're going to have a very ready attack for this. So like, in the next section where we're talking about like sweeps and attacks, we never allow someone to get this grip for free. We're attacking right away. But again, we screwed up for a second. He shed this hook. As soon as this is open, so shed the hook there, I know the pass is coming, right? I have to get ready with my knee elbow connection, and I'm going to make sure that my hand here is no longer controlling the ankle, because as he slides through, my grip is going to get shed and my arm can get trapped. So if I keep holding his ankle, I've only got one arm to defend myself. It's unlikely to work, and that shift to north-south is likely to seal the pass. So as soon as I recognize ankle control, I wasn't able to break it, this pops off, I release. He power slides, I track with my shin. So we talked about this kind of knee shin tracking in defending the regular no-gi de la Riva guard. In this case, my shin is tracking his hip. So he goes to slide through, I push him away, and I just reset. Notice how I immediately made a grip. If I hadn't made that grip, he's just right into his leg drags. So as soon as I just referenced anything that I can grab, in this case it was his wrist. So he initiates the pass, I bail, I frame, I knee track, now I've got a grip. So in this case, bicep and wrist. I'm in business. If I don't do this, he just changes sides and passes. So as soon as I got my knee tracking, he went through, I knee tracked, I've got a grip. If he goes to change directions now, it doesn't matter. Even if he gets all the way over to here, I'm going to be able to follow him. Just maintaining control of the lever to his shoulder. I could have done this. I could have done probably not this because Matt's biceps are way too big. But as long as I keep some kind of frame and grip here, even if he makes it to this side, I can invert and reset. So just preventing somebody from connecting their hands is a really good, just general pass prevention tip. As soon as I get my shin tracking, my frame in, I get a grip, I reset my guard. I can also start inverting right off the bat. So as he starts popping through here, I'm shin tracking, inverting, completing the full Granby. And again, grips. If I stay here, he's passing. So I immediately grip up, get some kind of guard established. I don't just count on my leg dexterity or even my guard retention. Your guard retention might be really skillful, but you're never going to win a match by spending the entire match or fight or roll or whatever, spending the entire time in your engagement, your retention phase. So we got to get our grips, we're going to get back to our maintenance phase and start attacking. So again, whether you use the shin tracking to this grip and just reset, or you use the shin tracking, blocking the shoulder, invert full Granby and resetting your guard, either way, that's a pretty solid response for this kind of again, power slide. It's some people call it a power knee. The past because we're a bunch of clowns, and you should do the same thing because it's fun. Alright, we're going to talk about some guard retention movements against the leg drag against the reverse de la Riva. So I'm just going to kind of show you how I utilize the leg drag against the reverse de la Riva, and then we're going to go through a couple of retention options. So, especially if your partner does play the foot on the hip, or even if it's not the foot on the hip, but I've managed to get this leg out and he didn't put it on the ground. Basically, anytime the foot is here, we have the option of the leg drag. But let's start with the foot on the hip here. So I'm going to make a double grip, right? Like we talked about that big sandwich grip, and I'm simultaneously shedding the hook while, and again, I'm not really pushing my partner's leg, I'm just keeping it where it is. So it looks like I'm pushing, but I'm not really pushing. I'm just popping this hook off while keeping this in space. I'm going to simultaneously start to drag, and I'm usually trying to back step a little bit when I do this. I'm not always going to be able to, so start the movement again. In the early stages, when I do this, what would your response be? There you go. So Matt would high leg, right? Once he's here, if I lose control of this grip, he can move into a sickle type sweep. There you go. All right. So in the early stages, if this occurs before I've managed to step back, the high leg comes in. He switches, controls the leg. There you go. That would be an easy follow-up. In the later stage, if I manage to shed this and backstep, now the high leg's not going to work, because you can see how I've brought Matt's knee across his hip. If you go to high leg now, I can just kind of turn your hip the other way. It's a little bit too late. So once I develop this angle, he's got a frame. Building to his elbow, I can't advance, he can retreat, and now he's going to pull usually into a shin-on-shin guard and attempt to move into single leg X or butterfly guard, whatever. So those are the two options. Matt, which one of those do you prefer?
If I can, I'd like to high step early, just because then I know he's not going to dominate the my hip angle.
There you go. As we've talked about earlier is better, yeah. So our earlier response, our initial response, as soon as we recognize that a pass is coming, we want to make that high leg, high step motion, block the leading edge, and reset our hips. If we get a little bit deeper, then we've got a frame and hip escape. Again, these are motions that you would see in our bottom game, guard game app from the BJJ formula, but there's a lot of resources that you can access teaching you basic guard retention movements. Should be your instructor that's doing that as well, quite frankly. If you're not learning basic guard retention pretty early, then your journey through jiu-jitsu is going to be a lot harder, because these are, again, absolutely fundamental movements at white belt. Any kind of guard, far more, let's say, amplified. Okay, we need to talk a little bit about blocking the crossface. We kind of always need to talk about blocking the crossface, because people who play a variety of guards tend to neglect this. And not just a variety of guards, this is a huge problem where people get their guard passed. So let's just say that you're in side control, and they're like, yeah, whatevs, this is good defense, I'll just do praying hands. This ain't shit, this doesn't work. Alright, what I want to make sure to do is actively frame against the biceps to block the crossface, even if we're dealing with like a side control passing scenario. But where this pertains to like the reverse De La Riva guard is if I'm playing here and Matt just comes in and just like, boom, crossfaces the crap out of me, and I allow this to happen. I'm gonna pass out here. Let's just, yeah, here we go. Whew. Alright. Yeah, it's all good. We've all seen and we all know people who play the reverse De La Riva like this. And not just the reverse De La Riva, they play half guard. People play guards where they just eat crossface all day and they rely on toughness and like perseverance to get themselves out of trouble. I'm not saying those are bad qualities. Toughness and perseverance are great, but going to them as your immediate go-to just means that you're going to be like, well, frankly, broken with herniated discs when you're in your 40s. You don't want to be that guy. So when Matt's coming in, my immediate initial thing is going to be to block that crossface. I'm not just blocking the crossface at the bicep, I'm blocking his torso with my elbow. I can now float him and start going into whatever other attacks I might concoct. However, if Matt is savvy to this, he may take his right hand and block, in which case I've got to let go. At this point, if I'm blocking the crossface, for example, like, would you long step here?
No, I wouldn't long step because I have no control over your upper body. So in this case, because you're already blocking, if I try and long step here, you're just going to bring your hips back.
Exactly.
Right? So if I'm here and I feel like you're blocking, I might as well change my hip. Change my hip angle and reset and start to look to pass again.
So you can see as soon as he changed his hip angle, I went back to De La Riva. So we're in reverse De La Riva. He kills my one frame. I immediately go to this frame, and I just maintain the elbow connection. I'm not worried about controlling his leg, because if I'm controlling his leg, I eat the crossface, and now I've got to be tough. Here I don't have to be tough. I just have to be patient and smart. And those are qualities that, in addition to toughness, are super useful. We don't want to have to trade one or the other. So here, he can't long step. He might reset, and I'll just go right back to my De La Riva or back to my reverse De La Riva and be ready to play, making sure that this shoulder never connects to my neck. If that happens, I might try to go to like deep half guard, but I'm going to be eating like a bad posture break on the bottom of the deep half guard. So just be aware that this is a priority at all times, whether you're playing guard, whether you're in the passing like retention phase, or whether you're fully in like some version of side control where you still have alignment. Block the crossface pretty much at all costs, and you're going to keep your alignment safe. More importantly maybe than your alignment in that moment in the match or in the roll, you're going to long-term keep your neck safe. If you spent half your rolls in this position, getting your face crushed, like I said, it's a matter of time. You will get herniated discs in your neck. You will have to take long periods of time away from jiu-jitsu, maybe even quit entirely, or just be that guy with a jacked up neck because you were too tough. And frankly, let's be honest, posture safe, enjoy jiu-jitsu for the rest of your life. Okay, it's time for us to move on to the attacks and sweeps from the reverse De La Riva guard. Generally speaking, with most practitioners of this guard, you'll see the Kiss of the Dragon being the main attack. I think
Oh, for sure. I've seen 2 reverse De La Riva specialists in a tournament go back and forth with this one attack. One guy Kiss of the Dragon the other guy Kiss the Dragon and back, the other guy Kiss the Dragon and back. It went back and forth 4 or 5 times. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, reverse De La Riva is a little bit like the 50-50 guard in that sense, is that usually when you come up, you're kind of still in that same configuration and can be swept back. So we're going to go over the Kiss of the Dragon, but we're also going to try to introduce a few, I don't want to say more modern necessarily, because we're just going to go into some leg entanglements. So there are some attacks that can lead into outside Ashi 411 that maybe you might not have seen before, and we're going to give you some arm drag options. But as we've talked about earlier, this isn't a huge part of our system. It's something that you need to be able to play under certain circumstances, but the majority of the work should be on developing your no-gi De La Riva, your mantis. It's just if you find yourself here, particularly against the knee cut, as we mentioned in the previous section, this is a guard retention position against the knee cut, and if you find yourself here and you don't have any attacks to launch, you're just going to be less of a threat to your opponent. So having to force your way back to the no-gi De La Riva or the mantis is not going to be as tactically sound under the circumstances as just attacking from the reverse De La Riva. So we're going to give you some attacks that hopefully will keep your partner a little bit less likely complacent and less likely to just Kiss of the Dragon you back over and over again. If we get to a leg entanglement, we should be able to finish. We're going to start our attacks out with an arm drag series, just simply because the most common response from your opponent is going to be to attempt to control your top ankle. We'll give you combat base and standing variations. We'll start in combat base. So what I'm talking about here is when I've got my foot anywhere, regardless of even if I've kind of got it out here, at some point I'm going to want to bring my foot into play, and you're going to be trying to grab it. So, and particularly if I'm playing the foot on the abdomen type, so if you're a little bit more into the knee cut here, this sort of foot into the abdomen, you're going to be doing that, so it'll be either the foot or the ankle that you'll be grabbing. So I need to have an answer for this, otherwise I'm just going to spend a ton of time flailing about with my foot. So I'm just going to make a wrist grip. I'm trying to take the the bone here that starts my pointer finger and my thumb, and I'm trying to insert that into this divot between your ulna and your fingers, basically, right? Like if I was trying to handcuff you really tight, not that I would ever do that to you, but if I was trying to, that might be where I might put those handcuffs. And I'd be kicking my leg up. At the same time, I'm extending the reverse De La Riva hook to shift your center of gravity. So simultaneously kicking this leg up, and now I've freed your leg. The reason I want to extend this leg is just to keep you going in that direction, because if you're driving into the knee cut and I go like this, it doesn't really help me very much. I can try to arm drag you, but I'm just going to pull you into an underhook, exactly. So I just want to make sure that I shift your center of gravity a little bit. So again, you're grabbing, I'm making that grip, I'm extending you away, and now I can come to my drag. And I want to put my chest, ideally, on top of your knee, right? We're going to go over an instance where we're not able to do that, and this is actually going to be quite common because the more aware people are of the arm drag, the more they shift backwards. But normally I'll be coming in here, reaching through, you're pretty much going to sit to your butt anyway, because you know that if you don't, I'm going to be jumping on your back. So the common response to the arm drag in scenarios like this, regardless of this guard, butterfly guard, whatever, is most good practitioners will recognize their beat to that angle, and they'll just sit to their hip and play guard.
So if I don't do that, if I'm stubborn,
if you're stubborn,
details on taking my back?
Yeah, so if we ended up here, I just managed to grab your hip, this knee being in the way is a little bit of a problem. So as long as this knee is in the way, I've got to somehow free it. So I can take let's just rotate this way. I can take my left shin and bring it forward as I put my hook in. So now I'm kind of controlling this lever to your hip as I rotate you around, insert my hook, and take the back. I I would say that this is extremely unlikely to happen. Like the back take tends to happen when someone's knee is down from the butterfly guard and I can embrace the knee. That's a realistic back take with an arm drag. With this scenario, we're going to be dealing with either somebody conceding to their hip because we finish at like a pretty rudimentary single, or because the frame is in the way, when I get to this drag position, somebody will drive their knee back in which case I'm going to take them over the head or over the hip to the other side. Both are, like, it just kind of depends on if somebody's driving purely laterally or on more of a 45-degree angle. So because I've managed to push you away when I gain the drag, if you start to come in now, because you're coming in at a 45-degree angle, I'll butterfly kick you over. I retain the wrist grip and the elbow grip because you're going to want to turn in and get on top. So I need to kind of control that. I'm basically punching towards your opposite armpit as I build up and attempt to come up on top.
Almost like a Kimura control to stop me.
Kind of, yeah. Like with the Kimura control, it's obviously it's a closed circuit, so it's going to be more powerful, it's stronger. So you have to be a little bit quicker building to your base, building to your elbow, but it's the same basic idea. And then if you were to come across a little bit more laterally, so if I manage to hit this drag, then we end up just kicking the person over and then landing in kind of a knee cut position. I wouldn't necessarily attempt to knee cut here because I could still be just re-dragged. Exactly. What I will do is bring my knee across, move to the 3/4 mount, and attempt potentially to still take your back. But if all we end up with is this, that's still a pretty damn good reversal from bottom guard, sweep, into 3/4 mount. So again, time your opponent and recognize that your opponent could be coming in more 45 degrees towards your shoulder or just more straight across to your hip, and adjust accordingly, using your reverse De La Riva hook now as a butterfly hook to either kick over your head or kick across your hip while you maintain the drag. And you want to try to maintain the drag by keeping your elbow against your partner's wrist like this, kind of trapping it. Like there's a platform arm lock that you can see Marcelo Garcia do all the damn time. It's really effective where he's pinching the hand. It's kind of a similar idea here. I'm pinching, I've got my drag, but I'm pinching my elbow in so that you can't bring your arm back across into an underhook, which gives you that rotational control. So I've managed to gain rotational control. I want to keep it, maintaining that lever to your shoulder, and then whatever I happen to do with my butterfly hook against your hip will depend on whether you're coming forward or a little bit more to the side.
Now, if I'm standing, does anything change?
Yeah, then I'm gonna have to wrestle. So if we end up here and this ends up happening, again, I'm extending away and I'm moving up into single. Right? I have to make sure that I really pull you like forward and then I drive my head into your rib cage, because just like with any kind of single leg attack, like wrestling attack anyway, if you're heavy on this leg when I come up, I've got bad base, I'm just gonna get knocked right back down. So I need to make sure that as I drag you, that I'm driving up, my left foot is going into base, I'm rocking up onto my right knee, pushing your weight onto that side. I should be able to scoop this other leg up, hopefully, but if we end up just coming up and I've got to finish a single, run the pipe, we can kind of go through that. So I'd be here, I'd be coming up, and then I'd end up with my knees pinched. My butt would be down, my back would be flat, my head would be in your rib cage, and I'm going to start running you in several directions. Then I can turn, dropping my shoulder, forcing you to sit down. Basically what I'm trying to do is make you perform a single leg squat with a bunch of weight attached. I think people have trouble with the single sometimes because they turn and bow, but they don't worry about keeping the end of the lever, and they allow somebody to have their ankle down here while they're pushing their hip down. It's very easy for somebody to absorb that.
Sure.
Right? So if I get myself here and I'm just kind of doing this, and your ankle is dropping down, there's not enough of a shift in your center of gravity, and there's not enough of this kind of cantilever effect. So I want to make sure that this pinch, or even I sometimes see people teach it this way.
Hike.
Yeah, which I actually think is quite powerful. As I turn and I bow, it's very difficult for you to have the strength and balance to do a single leg squat dynamically while changing directions.
With my foot held up.
With your foot held up in the air. Obviously, we can go down kind of a rabbit hole here of different finishes to the single, switching off to the double, high crotch, all that kind of stuff. It's not the time for that, but if you're going to play the reverse De La Riva, you're going to use the arm drag against a standing opponent, you're probably going to have to develop at least some finishing skills with your wrestling. Okay, now that we've covered kind of our initial arm drag style attack against the ankle grip, probably the most common attack from the reverse De La Riva guard is the Kiss of the Dragon. The Kiss of the Dragon can be used for a few different purposes. I personally mostly use it just to sweep, so I'm going to go through that mechanism right now. So again, this can happen for a few reasons. My kind of personal favorite is if our partner bases down on their knee. Anytime someone starts to shift their weight back and I can frame them, this allows me to move my arm into the underhook style position, kind of like we would do with the mantis. Like this would be like reverse De La Riva mantis if you wanted to call it that, but I'll be keeping my foot hooked instead. And I'm using like a bicep deep grip to start to pull myself into this inversion. At the same time, my hand, so my left hand, I'm using the reverse De La Riva with my right leg, so my right arm is in deep. My left arm is going to start to block my partner's armpit just to make sure he can't put any weight on me. And as I go to invert, it's important that my leg dots stay dangling out here. There are some potential attacks that my partner can do, or they can just like block my inversion and going through. So as I push my partner away and begin to invert, I want to roll through this space underneath his leg. I'm going to bring my knee to the inside right away, and I'm turning and taking my partner's leg off of the mat. So my right leg here is doing this kind of leg press motion to push my partner away, while my left foot moves into his ribs to block him. This is keeping him at bay. I'm now going to connect to the other leg while I bring my right foot into this like X-guard style position, resting his ankle in the crease of my neck and my shoulder, and I'm controlling the calf at the knee. I'm now just going to launch him away because I'm still holding his bottom leg, and we'll give you another ankle in a second. He can't recover his base. So I just keep my foot in his crotch, technical stand up, and get ready to pass. This is, like I said, this is the main attack that I use from here. This is possible from a standing position. If somebody's here and I manage to make this transition like this, it's just that when somebody's in a standing position, their base is different. This knee is not on the ground. So if I try to come up and sweep right now, just push back into me, he can battle me here. This is definitely a scenario where you might want to like switch into back takes and stuff like that. So I don't use it as much from that situation. I prefer to do this when somebody bases down. Again, blocking, you can like Cosby frame, inverted Cosby frame as you go, come through, knee stays tracking really tight. Do not leave this dangling. You know, if I were to leave my leg out here, I could actually get snatched up into like a 411 style transition or a 50-50. Like this is like potentially dangerous territory, outside ashi, all kinds of things can happen. Do not leave your knee exposed. Make sure that you tuck your, so again, right leg in the reverse De La Riva, he bases down. I swim this arm biceps deep. I invert and I bring my knees together almost as I take this off the ground. I'm scooping his ankle by aiding it with my hamstring. Put your foot on the ground, please, Matt. If I try to pull his leg off the ground here, stay heavy. Don't let me move you. Stay on this knee though. Don't let me lift your leg. I'm trying to move it with just my arm. Now don't let me lift your leg. I just move it with my leg. Do not make the mistake of trying to just pull with your arm. Extend. Keep your foot here in the ribs. I'm grabbing the ankle, or I'm grabbing around the knee here to prevent him from raising his knee off the ground. I push, push, push. My foot goes into his crotch. I dump him to the ground. Technical stand up, and I get ready to pass. So that's my most common usage of the Kiss of the Dragon motion, that kind of inversion through the legs. It moves through kind of an X-guard. There's certainly a couple of like different variations on it. One of the main variations that you're going to see is an attempt to take the back, and we're going to cover that in the next video. Okay, our next movement is going to be the Kiss of the Dragon inversion to attacking the back. This is not something that I play quite too much personally. I teach it, but this guy plays it a lot, so we're going to have him show how he takes the back from the Kiss of the Dragon, and then maybe we'll pick his brain about some stuff.
Great, so we're going to start with this Kiss of the Dragon here, okay? So just like Rob was saying, I want to have that sort of grapevine leg around, and then I'm going to go for my underhook here, okay? So when I go in here like this, like Rob was saying, curl your head inside. I almost imagine like I'm bringing an ice cream to my mouth. So I go like this, and then that allows me to bring my leg inside, and I try and make a connection here, okay? So I definitely don't want to leave my leg out here as it will be open to attacks. So I hide my leg and bring it in, okay? So sometimes when I do this, I have to actually, you'll see me pull myself behind my partner, okay? And then I set my wedge in behind his knee here, because obviously if I leave it out there, that's going to be issues, okay? So I'm here, making sure that I keep my instep behind his knee. Now when I'm in this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and circle my leg inside here. Okay, so here's where people make a lot of mistakes, okay? Because now it's time for me to let go of the legs and to transition up to grab at the hips, okay? The problem is if I just try and do this like this, he's just going to run away. Okay, so I've got to take away his base from this position. You'll also notice that I have an underhook and I have an overhook, okay? So that's totally fine. So when I'm here, I want to make sure that, of course, I'm not like this. I want to hide my knees and use my insteps. I'm going to try and increase the space between his knees by doing this. Once he does this, can you move at all?
Not comfortably.
Not easily, right? Like he can base forward,
yeah.
But ideally what I want him to do is I want him to fall back on me. So what I'm going to do now is I've broken his base. I'm going to grab his hips here, and I'm going to start to pull his ass towards my face. As I do this, I'm going to sit up, and I'm going to extend my hooks away. And then you'll see me start utilizing wedge hooks on either side. So I have this outside hook, and I'm trying to, his legs are quite long compared to mine, but what I'm trying to do is internally rotate at least one leg. So now if I'm here, I'm going to look for my seatbelt. If Rob tries to move around or whatever, I'm going to keep him out of base by using this. Okay? Then I'm going to be able to start looking for my hooks. So I'm here, I throw my first hook in, and then my second hook follows. Okay? So again, here, go underneath. As I pull myself in, I'm going to hide my knee and pull myself right underneath my opponent's hips. Now this leg is going to circle in. So as I do this, immediately I open up his legs. You see how immediately his base gets broken. Now in this transition here, I can go to his hips. So I start pulling his ass towards my face, and then I extend my hips, and I sit up, and I keep my toes very live here. Okay, I don't want to be just floppy because then I have no control over his legs. He will get into base. I keep him out of base, okay? I secure my seatbelt, and then for me to maintain my base, I go one hook and then the other. Okay? And I'm in position to attack the back.
Can you just go through that motion, like full motion, start to finish? So a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Do you find any interference or significant interference from somebody controlling this ankle?
I definitely don't want them to control this ankle. When we were doing in the earlier videos, this grip, the overhand grip, I find that you need to get some kazushi. So this does play a big factor, okay? Like I need to put my foot on the ground and knock him forward to go inside. When you grab here, I definitely don't want this grip. Okay, I try and break that grip if I can, or if it's here and you're already defending, I could go here. Okay, this underhanded grip here, it kind of allows me to go in. So even if you're grabbing that leg, I can always bring my knee in behind. So I don't feel, as long as my knee isn't out here, I feel like I can hide that leg. Okay, so how do I do that? I keep my knee very close to my chest as I invert. I don't want to invert with like this big lever sticking out here like Rob was talking about. So here, if he's grabbing my foot here and he's trying to shut me down like this, when I come inside, I find that I can still hide that foot. Then I'm going to pummel in and knock him off balance, okay? And of course, like I like to sit him up this way. If he were to fall back this way, which is quite common, I'm going to go right into my twister hook stuff, my crab ride stuff. So I have to have answers for each direction that my opponent can fall.
So would you say that there are a lot of like potential different directions that I can go, a lot of different potential options?
Definitely, because when he's loaded up like that and I'm positioned under his hips, I have such a dominant angle that my opponent he's likely to try and escape in any direction. So I just want to make sure that I maintain alignment to him. As you can see, I'm trying to take him out of base by, externally rotating his knees, doing things like that, buying me time, which I can grab up, control his hips, right? He might, like when I do this technique, a lot of the time what people will do is, right, my goal when I get here, when I do this is I'm trying to pull him onto me, but a lot of times what will happen is I'm in here and guys will know that I'm going for Kiss of the Dragon, so they'll put their hands on the mat, right? So when this happens, I gotta be prepared for this as well. Normally what I do is I keep the levers and I try and pin my knee over one side, and now I'm gonna continue to try and either climb up the back, and there's some other leg entanglement options I can do there. Usually I'm just gonna try and come up and secure my position here.
So if we wanted to cover all of these options, we would be here till like 4 in the morning.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff here. There's lots of great attacks that you can do once you just learn how to control levers, and there's lots of leg lock stuff there too.
All right, so like I said, we'd be here till 4 in the morning, so now's probably not the time to do a deep dive into inversions, crab rides, barambolos, all that kind of like going upside down, modern jiu-jitsu to attack the back, particularly in the gi since we're not dressed for it. So maybe at some point down the road, if you wanted to share some of that information, we could get Stefan in here and you guys could film an instructional on that topic. I know I'd buy it.
Yeah. Modern jiu-jitsu, I think that'd be a great idea.
Cool. Okay, now let's go back to some shit that I do all the time. This is like a far leg grip that is going to lead into either a shin sweep or an X guard. So when we utilize our reverse de la Riva against a standing opponent, and we manage to take our kuzushi where we've posted our foot on the mat and forced a step, I can switch now to a far leg grip where like I'm hooking. I use this as a backup. Like I don't want to reach for this leg and maybe have to deal with like a crossface or something coming in. Exactly. So when I drift my partner and I go to grab the far leg, I keep my hand here. So now if you go to drop in, like I can always just shield. So I'm using my frame connection to his knee. If he starts to come in, I just turn my elbow, create this frame, and that allows me to move into this like shin style guard that I can move through to the X guard if necessary, or move into just a classic shin sweep. So let's just get a slightly different angle here. Again, I create the kuzushi, I block, so my hand can be on the knee and my hand can be here, and now I'm pulling my partner's knee to me. So I'm basically like bicep curling, like which way is the beach kind of thing, and framing in here with my shin underneath. I can bring my knee in and just extend a lot of the time, but if I don't feel like that's a good option, my left foot is going to come in, I'm going to start to float my partner. So when I say float, what I'm trying to do is just make sure that I keep his leg off the ground or keep it elevated while my right knee stays in and then comes out. When I move into the X guard, this is kind of a more recent innovation. You know, in the past you would see X guard, can I get you to lift you?
Sorry, boss.
You'd see X guard, you just call me boss?
Yeah.
Badass. Feeling better about myself today. This kind of like classic X guard, which is great, is accessible to this kind of lever manipulation. So what we've been doing with our X guard, and I didn't come up with this, I stole this from the Mendez brothers, but as I move my partner to there, I'm keeping the edge of my foot in that position that we call the dick post for fairly obvious reasons. It's like a near side X hook. This allows my leg press to push my partner away. If I'm here and I'm trying to move him, like it's like barely effective, and Matt's shorter than I am, so here, as I go to launch him, I'm far more effective. I can migrate down, I can like manage my hooks as necessary as I turn into base, flaring my elbow up, building to my hand, keeping the kneecap. Now I can technical stand up and finish the sweep. So when we're moving through this position, it's again important to be blocking the crossface at all times, pulling our partner in, turning our knee in so that I'm not ending up here like this where he could drop on top of. Yeah, exactly. Like if I've got a good deep half guard, great. But we're trying to play some distance guards here. We're not trying to let our partner in. This foot comes in, manages the range while I move to this near side or this dick post. If he starts to drive back towards me, I can really float him. There's a ton of power here that doesn't exist with that far side hook. So try to keep your foot in here. If I gain control of the other leg, now I'm in the business. I can just put him down. If I don't gain control of the other leg, he posts out. I just launch him away, keeping this leg straight with my, like the ball of my foot in his abdomen. Hand to the mat, withdraw the leg. Here I'm going to connect my hands, drag him down to the mat. Rotate back to where you're in base. It's certainly doable to come up here and start attacking, but I'm going to be better off, like anytime I start to try to let go to climb the body, I'm taking a potential risk. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, and there are ways to do it, but the easier thing to do is to pull your partner to the mat and initiate your pass in there. Again, I'm not saying not to do the other ones, it's just this is not an X-Guard instructional. We don't have the time to get in all those different finishes. And anytime you release the leg to jump the back, you're taking a little bit of a risk. So like there is a placeholder system way of doing it. We'd go down a crazy rabbit hole if we started it, but our far leg grip feeds into our X-Guard, or again, just quickly, the shin sweep variation. Let's just turn a little bit this way. The shin sweep variation would involve floating our partner, coming here and connecting our knee where we would be able to, or like connecting our knees and our shins where we would be able to grip our partner's ankle. From here, I'd be tilting my partner backwards, using this lever against the side of his knee and the block against the side of his ankle to tilt him on his back, extending, moving into a passing position from here. They're kind of interchangeable, it just sort of depends on how your partner moves his leg and whether you're able to capture the ankle. If you capture the ankle, the shin sweep is a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but like less energy intensive, because you don't have to perform a dynamic technical stand-up against your partner's body weight, you just dump them and then get up. If you can't do that, the X-Guard with that near side kind of dick post or crotch post, if you want to be gender neutral, I'll reserve comment, then you know, you can use that and enjoy either result. They're very reliable. Okay, our next attack, and this is going to be actually two attacks that both end up kind of in the same position, which is the 411. So when we've got like a standing opponent, and we utilize this kuzushi, and we go to what we call this the rifle butt. I think you actually coined this name, which is we place our partner's heel or sole of their foot in our bicep, so we're still kind of catching like the side of the calf here like this. Always framing. We can add the additional frame here, and I'm going to move through this position into like a backwards X. Matt calls it a mock X. One of the instances you're going to see is people dropping to their knee, so we'll go through that first. Our partner drops to her knee, we're going to take an overhook over the calf, and ideally I'm catching that ankle. This won't always be possible, so don't worry about it too much if you don't get it, but this certainly gets the guy stuck in this position and allows you to really like manipulate their base. All right? But if I don't get this because he's got his foot kind of out wide, or maybe I'm a little bit shorter, he's a little bit taller, it's not that big of a deal. I just need to extend my partner away a little bit to create some space for my hips to move. If my partner's too close to me here and I attempt to like do some kind of attack, he's just going to build back into base. So I want to make sure that I extend my partner away slightly. Now I can drop my top hook down to my partner's knee pit as I adjust my hips and climb into the 411. So I'm adjusting my hips by pushing off my right foot, scooting them out, and I'm not trying to be this guy. I'm not trying to Gumby my way into this position. I'm angling my hips, and I should just be able to insert my hook. I'll occasionally be, or it'll be a requirement occasionally, again, depending on kind of the angle of his hip, how close it is to me, it'll occasionally be required that I lift my hips up to lace this. But if I've got a really good angle and decently long legs, I can usually just put that hook in. When I do put the hook in though, I'm going to want to climb my hips anyway, so you may as well just do it right off the bat. You can also use your hand or elbow to help you. Now my hips are up in the air. I'm keeping my knee open, wedging against his hip, and I'm keeping my right foot down and my left foot hooking. So both my hooks are active and strong, and I'm hipping in slightly. My left hand, let's turn a little bit so you can see, because there are two potential finishes here. So I climb to here. My left hand is going to hook behind the knee, not really behind the knee, like it's at the juncture of the shin bone with the calf, and keep this angle exposed. He wants to hide his heel by turning it down, exactly. So now go to hide your heel. Very difficult while I extend my hip and pull back into my catch. So I was over top, keeping a good strong wedge here. I secured to the knee, I extend my hip, and I pop my elbow back, keeping my head on the ground for base, catch the false grip, and I'm good to finish just by bringing my thumb to my chin and rocking back with my lat against the end of the lever, against the bunion of the big toe. That's one potential option here. Another potential option is if I find that I can't get the dig because he continues to turn, then we roll through into the stomp 411. I'm keeping my right foot on his calf or the pit of his knee, and I'm keeping my ankles crossed. I'm still holding that side of his knee. We'll give you another angle in a second, and I'm going to pinch that's like the side of my biceps against the flat of my partner's foot, right across where the bunion and the pinky toe would, like this line would connect. Got my dig, extend to break. So I'm extending with my legs and extending with my body, using that concept of taking the slack out of the joint, which we've covered in some of our other material. Let's give you the backwards angle on this. So if I'm here, I get this to go, I go to here, I get my leg in. I'm controlling this other leg. I drop the foot, move my hip, and insert. So now I want to dig, but I didn't manage to prevent this knee from turning. So I belly down, and my leg slides. If I don't do that slide into the knee pit, if I'm here, complete the roll mat, this is a potential like continuation. So roll back, please. So my leg slides down to stop it. I'm still gripping here. Try to roll. He's stuck. He's not going anywhere. I keep that grip that I was using earlier to try to prevent the turn, and I bite. I'm using the back of my triceps against this bone right here, catching the flat of his foot with the side of my biceps, making a shelf underneath here. Then I'm going to turn my hands to connect. I extend, taking the slack out, bring his toes down towards his butt, and I'm bridging in to finish. We don't do that in training. That's like a dynamic braking mechanic thing, so we only do that in competition. So that's how we do this movement when our partner is dropping to their knee. If they stay in base, there's another version, and I'm realizing right now that this video is so long that we'll do that version in the next video. Okay, so now we need to go through the second variation, which is going to occur when our partner doesn't base down the knee. So we go through our initial like kuzushi, we move to the rifle butt, we settle into the reverse X. We've got the overboard, like the backwards X, reverse X, but our partner, instead of dropping their knee, yeah, they stay in really good base. As long as I'm keeping a strong reverse X with my knee underneath my partner's rib cage. Like if this slips out, this is obviously not a good, yeah, exactly. So I want to make sure that I can do that. The next step is going to be to use my right knee and my right hook and my left hook all in combination, driving this way to try to take my partner's leg off the ground. I'm still keeping a strong overhook here. You can grip the calf, you can cinch up, whatever allows you to create like a good tight mechanic here, you use. That's going to be a little bit of like a matter of personal preference. When I bring my partner's leg to me, I'm going to grab around the back of the knee, hugging around with my fingers around the front of the kneecap. Now I'm going to pump the leg up in the air, and I'm going to let him drop by sliding my left knee into the 411 here, keeping this overhook and dropping to the strong side, immediately digging and finishing with that extension and taking the slack out of the joint motion. I'll give you a slightly different angle here. So again, up, going through, getting my overhook, switching to the reverse X. He stays in base. Even if he stays up fairly tall, I'm going to be able to load him up. If I don't grab his knee, this is important. People who are aware of the reverse X, if I just float him and do this, he's going to run. I need to make sure that I secure the direct lever to his hip, bringing my fingertips over top of his kneecap, pulling my knees to me, launching him, and still maintaining that control. And still maintain, excuse me, this control. We've been filming for a while, my voice is starting to go. I'm now going to extend my hip and drop him to this side, keeping this leg trapped. It's fine if we were to fall to this side. It's because I've got both legs trapped, I'm still going to be able to dig. I could bring this leg underneath. There are a lot of versions of this. You know, there's certainly some really good material you can investigate. If we just turn back here for a second. Eddie Cummings has an awesome instructional where he talks about laces ashy from the 411 type movement. There's all kinds of good material. Basically, if you end up here, he's fucked. You're finishing, right? Like, again, I don't want to turn this into like an extended tutorial on heel hook finishing from the 411 because there's a ton of good material. Again, especially Eddie Cummings stuff. Get that shit. It's awesome. The reverse X It's an excellent entry. A key point, like I said, grab that knee, don't allow your partner to just extract. Either side is good. I tend to favor the strong side a little bit, although I'm getting better and appreciating the weak side kind of attacks a lot more. We've added that to our leg lock system in the last year and a half. So, you know, we might even put out an update to the modern leg lock formula, including that material. But against the standing opponent into the 411. Okay, our next leg lock entry from the reverse De La Riva is going to be a transition to outside ashi. This is going to come out of a Kazushi movement, because if I, well, as all things really should with these attacks, if I just camp out here and try to like shoot to outside ashi, like it's going to be a disaster. I'm going to get leg drag. He might intercept and move into outside ashi, you know, for himself. He can turn into the 411. There are all kinds of bad things that can happen here. So I got to make sure that I am using either the X underneath, the foot on the ground, something that starts to move my partner. If he starts to go to reset himself backwards, that's when I'm going to start to push him this way. And now I'm going to catch behind the knee and move to the outside ashi. I start behind the knee, my leg is pressing against his hip, but if I stay here, he drops his knee to the ground, and now my arm's trapped. So that's a very important thing to adjust when we're doing the entry. I start behind the knee. So let's say I got the Kazushi to happen, he's off balance for a second, he comes back in, I frame, I grab the knee, I shoot my leg across, and I drop my hand. So the pit of my, or the like my biceps is going behind my partner's heel. I don't want to stay here. I go to the end of the lever, and this extension now with my left leg, combined with a chopping motion with my right leg, is gonna buckle my partner's leg. It's certainly possible from here to come up into like reverse or a shiro ashi, trying to go to 411, but you know, we've covered a lot of this stuff in the modern leg lock formula. We're not gonna go crazy with that. We're just gonna land here. We're opening our knees up, or like if you play more of this style, it's certainly viable to do so, provided that we keep, from here, we keep this leg in the air. If I let this come down, he starts to retract and build his base. As long as I keep the end of this lever, he can't build up, I can dig. So that's gonna be our standard operating procedure. We drop our partner, whether we do this style of outside ashi or more this flared style of outside ashi. I'm gonna transition with my left arm underneath the leg, pull this up, pull my partner's foot into my armpit. So my right arm is underneath the heel. I grab underneath the Achilles tendon with my left arm, keeping my elbow closed. If I keep my elbow flared, if he beats this frame, now he's reaching through and grabbing my arm. Uh-oh, I'm kind of screwed here. So I'm keeping this elbow closed. There we go. No vulnerability here in my structure. I post my hand on the mat, open my elbow up, allowing his leg to slip through. I pinch this to my armpit, bringing my biceps over top, catching the edge. Right, I want that flat part of my partner's foot against my armpit. I want the side of my bicep against the sole of my partner's foot. I create that false grip. I can switch to my reverse butterfly hook, which would be my preference here. I would rock down against my partner's toes. I'm shrugging, crunching, and then bridging laterally into the knee. A good test for this, we kind of went over this in the modern leg lock formula, is can I finish with one hand? If you can finish with one hand, you're in business. So that's a pretty reliable entry. Again, you're gonna have to get a little bit proficient with your dig and breaking mechanics from outside ashi. So if you're not a leg locker, it's probably not something you should be messing with. Get good with your leg locks. And until you do, you really shouldn't mess around with these. Outside ashi in particular is a more, let's say, finicky position. The outside heel hook is more difficult to finish, especially at a higher level than the reverse heel hook. So if you were to start out anywhere, there's a reason we listed the other ones, the 411 entries, before we did this. Get to the 411, way easier to finish, better for control, all that kind of stuff. But because it's a better position, it can also be more difficult to get to. So sometimes against an opponent that's a little too savvy for you to get them into the 411, you'll be able to get to outside ashi. It's just, you're gonna have your work cut out for you. So like, sorry about the speechifying, it's just if you're not familiar with leg locks, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on how you might incorporate this into your reverse De La Riva. If you don't have leg locks, stick with the Kiss of the Dragon. Reverse De La Riva game. Okay, our next entry is going to go from the reverse De La Riva into the 411 again, but We're gonna go through a near side, like kind of half Granby, half inversion, and then we're gonna chop the near leg out. So again, some kind of kuzushi, we get our partner moving. Our foot is gonna temporarily go on the hip. We don't wanna get it too deep because we're worried about that estima lock, right? So like the ball of the foot is touching our partner's hip, and we need to invert ourselves. The stronger our control here is, the less likely our partner's gonna pull out. If we're just using an ankle grip here, as I go to do this, it's unlikely that I'll be able to keep him in place. So combined with that kuzushi, I wanna have a bit of a deep, like overhook around on the calf. When I step on my partner's hip, I'm going to attempt to invert and bring my hip, as this gentleman so eloquently put it, he tries to put his dick against the side of somebody's knee. So I want to bring my hip underneath here, and I'll be kicking out the back of the knee and inserting the 411 entanglement at this point. I'll also try to catch this leg immediately. If I don't catch this leg, while I dig, there may be some heel hiding, like I might have to deal with some problems. But if I've still got this strong grip on the calf, and I get to here, I immediately catch this leg. I can cross it over, use a stomp 411 variation. Now if you go to hide your heel, pretty damn impossible. I catch and I finish using that extension, that crunch. And so let's give you a slightly different angle here. Again, some kind of kuzushi, deep overhook, 1, 2, get that hip underneath. Kick the knee out, insert, try to catch the far leg. If my partner doesn't immediately bring it to that side, if they do, I'm gonna chase, which again, this isn't the time to go into like a deep 411, but we're gonna have to chase the 411 as he rotates that way. We'd be blocking the toes, we'd be trying to dig, all that good stuff. But for now, if we can quickly get here and stomp, he can no longer turn in either direction. Right? My hip is preventing his knee from going to the ground, which means he can't turn to his right. My stomp is putting this knee on the ground, which is controlling the lever to his hip, preventing him from going back to his left. Because of the restriction on his spine, the fact that it's twisted up, I've broken his posture, his structure, I've denied him base. I can easily use the dig mechanic here, just pinching the flat of his foot against my rib cage and against the inside of my biceps. I create the shelf underneath. I connect my hands. We can use our reverse butterfly grip for maximum effect. Shrug. You can see like I can barely move at this point before Matt is forced to tap. So it's a really good entry. I believe that John Calistine uses this to great effect. Who's a awesome guy who trains with Eddie Cummings a lot. I'm betting you picked up a few good heel hook tips from him. So yeah, check him out, watch his material, support the guy if you can. He's one of these guys who doesn't like to talk a lot of shit and just gets out there and does the business, and people like that in jiu-jitsu deserve our support, so get behind him. Okay, we've got another entry from the reverse del Hiva into the 411. We actually, I guess, have quite a few of these. Also, I think utilized by John Calistine, who I've kind of mentioned earlier. It's a guy that you should watch and support. Awesome competitor. So when we get into this reverse del Hiva scenario, and again, we use a kuzushi that forces our partner to step, and we can catch this far leg. This is going to create that entry, kind of similar to what we did earlier, where we were pulling into like the shin sweep or the extra, except in this case we're going to imanari. If you don't know what an imanari is, it's like this kind of motion going into the 411. So an imanari is basically a Granby roll over my shoulder. I imbalance my partner, I frame and I catch, and I'm going to swing this leg while sticking my butt up in the air. And I need to have enough space for my head to clear through here. Now that's why that initial kuzushi is so important, because if he's too close to me and I go to do this, even if if this leg is too close, if I go to do this and my head gets caught and I don't make it through, now we're in like a battle that I probably won't win because he's in base and I'm not. So we want to make sure that there's enough space here that when I hook this, that my head clears through the space, and my hip has to shoot up, and this knee has to drop in behind my partner's knee to buckle them. Right? So if you're a taller guy and you're doing this against a shorter guy, do make sure that there's a significant kuzushi forcing a pretty decent step so we can come through here and then land with our dick against the side of our partner's knee, and this knee is opening up. I'm still going to be doing this like pushy motion, and I can block that far leg here, dropping my partner to the strong side, catching the heel, going over, and finishing with our reverse heel hook. So just be wary, like I said, Give you a slightly different angle here. Be wary of attempting this without a kazushi. If I were to just try to imanari to here, like, there's no way, right? Make sure that you're disrupting your partner's base, breaking their alignment. So I might even use this kazushi here, and as he steps back in, I'm ready for him. I roll through, and I finish on the imanari roll with 411. Just because this is kind of like a fancy cool movement, there's gonna be temptation to do this before building your other basics. As we've mentioned earlier, kazushi first, break alignment first, make sure that you're comfortable inverting. If the ingredients of this movement aren't something that you're super proficient with, then the entire movement is not going to connect very well. Make sure that you can actually control the 411. Like, these are relatively advanced movements. Make sure you can control the 411, make sure you can invert properly, make sure you understand the kazushi and like that basic kiss of the dragon movement where you're inverting through before you start moving on to this kind of stuff. You definitely don't want to shoot your legs at people without disrupting them first, because they are going to snatch them up, maybe go into a leg entanglement of their own, or redirect, leg drag, attack your back, that kind of thing. Stay safe, break alignment, get proper control, take your partner's balance, and then you can attack with cool stuff like this. Okay, so we talked in an earlier video about the idea of not allowing the crossface, kind of blocking the crossface at all costs, right? So if Stefan were to come in and I just leave this open, even if he doesn't pass my guard, I'm eating a horrible posture break the entire time. And I kind of talked about this idea of longevity. If you want to do jiu-jitsu in your 50s, 60s, that kind of stuff, and you've got 6 herniated discs because you ate crossface for every round for 4 years while you played deep half or reverse delhi or whatever, it's kind of on you, right? We can advise you against it, but you're taking your life in your own hands. However, because we know that people want to use this attack, if I keep my hand here and it seems like I can be cross-faced and then I intercept and move into the shoulder clamp. Shoulder clamp is basically, there's a few different names for it. Some people call it like an underhook guard. I know Sean Williams has kind of variation on it. Again, not the time now, but when you say shoulder clamp, what I'm talking about is this gable grip, and I'm keeping my ear towards my shoulder, and I'm extending using my knee to attack the reverse armbar. Right?
It's this knee that totally destroys my alignment.
Exactly.
I'm not too bad. Oh, crap.
And then you're getting straightened out. Exactly. So, again, even if I'm like relatively undefended with my jaw, and I just make sure that you don't manage to hit the side of my jaw. As long as you can access the side of my jaw this way, my jaw is basically acting as a lever twisting my spine up. But if I make you meet the front of my jaw and just get my arm in here, I'm actually quite all right as long as this forearm is framing your shoulder, your chest.
Your yellow forearm.
Exactly, my yellow forearm. If this were to happen, I just ate an arm triangle, right? Like, this is not what we're looking for, right? So my elbow has to stay close to my body, and then as you come in, I'm just catching you. Now, I may not be able to finish. In fact, quite frankly, a lot of the time, I won't be able to finish because you see how low Stefan's hip is right now. What I can do is take the sweep, and that's usually how you're gonna see this employed. Right? You would have to be a little bit greedy and trying too hard to force yourself in this direction for me to usually finish you. Obviously, like certain speed, size, disparity, all that kind of stuff, but all things being equal, if you come in and I manage to hit this shoulder clamp, as I go to extend you away, it's more likely that this will happen here. Now that I've taken the sweep, however, the option of finishing is still there, as long as I didn't lose the arm, as long as I managed to keep your forearm, your wrist caught between my shoulder and my ear. If I bring this leg across, now we can go back to, if you start to come up, I can finish by switching sides. Right, so I was on my right hip. Right now your arm is too close to my hip for me to finish, but as I switch to my left hip, the space is opened up again, and as long as my shin is blocking your rib cage, my foot will usually be on your hip, and my leg is covering your head to break your posture. I can finish that way. There's also the possibility, if I have just swept you and you start to come back up, so if we get to here, I sweep you, I throw this leg over, then we can switch to the arm bar this way, controlling, like bro handshake style, turning the thumb towards the feet. My knee pinches down, isolating the shoulder. I create a bit of a wedging pressure with my right thigh here, the one that's low to the ground, pushing up, and I'm just extending into the arm bar. A lot of the times your partner will roll forward. Just be prepared for that. You can catch the head, turn the thumb towards the feet. We've got some material on braking mechanics, like joint lock mechanics, but just to quickly recap, I want rotation, internal rotation. I want extension. I want to immobilize the joint. I want to take all of the slack out of all of the surfaces, so or the joint surfaces, right? So, or joint surfaces, joint structures, not surfaces. So like ligaments, tendons, capsules, things like that, cartilage. As I go to full tension by extending, fully immobilize the joint, add rotation, and then limit the movement. I don't have to bridge nearly as much to finish. So keep all that in mind if you're trying to apply the arm lock in any of its stages. Without that concept of rotating the joint, extending, and removing all like extraneous sources of movement. So the only movement I want in any kind of elbow lock or arm bar is movement, whatever I'm using, whether it's my hip, whether it's my hands, against that elbow in the wrong direction, and then full immobilization of the wrist, full immobilization of the shoulder, broken posture if I can achieve it, and again, taking all of that slack out before I apply force. I don't want to bleed force by bridging or crunching super hard until I've eliminated all of that slack from the structure.
So just one more time, if I overcommit, if I crazy dive towards the head,
Yes.
and go too far in that direction.
Yeah, so if you're crazy diving this way, and I'm intercepting, then I can just keep my knee in, get my foot on your hip, and finish on the reverse armbar by shifting to my other hip. But usually this will end up with me blocking you, dumping you onto your side. I'll either come up on top, or you'll start to come back. I can throw my leg over your head. Anyway, there's a whole series of
Like what
attacks.
we just did.
Like what we just did. And the shoulder clamp itself is an incredibly reliable sort of adjunct to any guard, whether it's the reverse de la Riva, the butterfly guard, the closed guard. If you can gain this control,
Life is good.
life is really good. I cannot be struck. I can sweep much easier. I've got avenues to the back. It's something that I think you should invest some time in. Seek it out. It will make your guard much more effective.